We are live.
Namandabats, 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 namandabats.
Good morning, and welcome to the New York Buddhist Church. Today is Sunday, May 8th. Happy Mother's Day. We welcome to our streaming service, broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. We will open service with quiet sitting. Please sit up straight, gently calm your mind, and follow your breath.
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namondabts, 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 Namondabts.
We will begin today's chant with JÖ-SEI-GE, the Reaffirming of Vows, TAN-NEMBUTSU, and Ekoku Merit Transference. Following our chant will be Vandana and Ti-Sarana. We will then have our meditative reading, and we have a special guest, Reverend Claudia Ruth Kohn, will be delivering today's Dharma message. To end service, we will sing Ondokusan and Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namondabts, 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 namondabts. JØ-SEI-GE is found on page 93 of your service book. Namandabhu, Namondab, 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 namondab. Everyone, please rise if you can and join me in the reading of the Vandana and Ti-Sarana. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Namandabutsu, 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 Namandabutsu. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming in today on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Mother's Day is, I was reminded this morning, it's a verb as well as an adjective. So the first experience we have in the womb is that of hearing our mother's heart and experiencing the great compassion that all mothers hold. So happy Mother's Day to everyone, whether or not you have children. So our reading today is on page, let's see, it's on page 17, reading number 6. Please read with me. The spirit of Buddha is great wisdom and compassion to save all people by any and all means. It is the spirit of a mother toward her child, nourishing and protecting it. It is the spirit that prompts us to be ill with the sickness of people, to suffer with their suffering. Your suffering is my suffering, and your happiness is my happiness, said Buddha. And he does not forget that spirit for a single moment, for it is the self-nature of Buddhahood to be compassionate. A mother realizes her motherhood by loving her child. Then the child reacting to his mother's love feels safe and at ease. The Buddhist spirit of compassion is stimulated according to the needs of the individual. Each person's faith is the reaction to this spirit, and it leads them to enlightenment. Namandabutsu, Namandabutsu, Namandabutsu. So it gives me great pleasure today to introduce to you our speaker, who is originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Her name is Claudia, Reverend Claudia Kohn. She came to New York after university and lived in the UK and in Hong Kong following her husband's job. And during the time they were in Hong Kong, Claudia discovered Buddhism after taking a class in meditation. And after 20 years abroad, they returned to the United States and moved to New York City. So as well as being a docent at the Statue of Liberty, Claudia co-managed a soup kitchen to assist people with food insecurity. And she worked in hospice with the Visiting Nurses Service of New York and trained as a Reiki healer and in mindfulness basic stress reduction. In 2019, she graduated from One Spirit Interfaith Seminary, where she was ordained as an interfaith minister. The ministry path she chose was chaplaincy. She worked at Lenox Hill and Brooklyn Methodist hospitals. She also completed foundational training with the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care. Currently, she's a dean at One Spirit Seminary and a chaplain at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. She's writing a book about her experience as a chaplain resident during COVID and what it's like to be a Buddhist chaplain on staff. So, with great pleasure, Reverend Claudia Kohn.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you all for asking me to speak today. I feel very honored. My name is Claudia Ruth Kohn. I've been in New York City for about 7 years now. My work as a hospital and a hospice chaplain gives me great satisfaction. I meet fascinating people, and I'm really privileged to hear their stories. Often I meet people who are in a situation where they're feeling very sad, they're frightened, they don't understand everything that's going on around them. And there are many times when the greatest gift I can give them is just to sit with them, without words, just sitting in silence. The author Brené Brown has talked about this full silence. She says, this is true compassion. It's the willingness to sit in the dark with someone, to sit in their space of darkness, and not be in a hurry to turn on the light. Chaplaincy can be like that. My job is not to solve anything, but to be a true companion, a loving companion, a presence that acknowledges the truth of whatever situation that individual is going through in that particular moment, to stay by their side. Being Buddhist is like that too. Our process of learning in this existence as humans requires us to acknowledge everything that is in our lives and not to push it away or deny it, but to acknowledge it and be curious and figure out a way to move on from there. When I was thinking about this talk and thinking about my life, I realized that in many ways I have been learning about compassion and suffering and learning how to interact with those states of being for my whole life. My life has been a sort of training ground to bring me to this career as a chaplain. So I'd like to share a little bit about myself with you. I was born in upstate New York in a small town at the edge of Lake Seneca. My parents are from Boston, and my older brother was born there in Boston shortly before they had me. We moved upstate because my father had been teaching a course at a local university. And shortly after my birth, we all moved back to Massachusetts, and my parents divorced. Being the early 60s, my brother and I stayed with my mother, as joint custody was not a popular thing back then. My parents were very unskilled in divorce. Not that people really get a practice run, but divorce was not generally found to be acceptable in those days, at least not in Massachusetts. Both my parents used my brother and I as pawns to score off each other points. And in the end, my mother had custody, so she did take her revenge by not allowing us to be with my father. The ones who suffered the most in this unhappy situation was, of course, my brother and I. We were too young to fully understand what was going on. What we knew was we didn't see our dad, and our mother was busy pouring poisonous words into our ears about our father. Her bitterness was such that it enveloped her to the point that she could not understand how she was harming her children. Our father just stayed away, again, perhaps not understanding the harm he did to his children. They were lost in those feelings of loss and grief and anger. As a child, I lived in great fear that I would one day lose my mother as well. I did not have any idea of how or why these things happened, but clearly sometimes parents left. And my 5-year-old self decided from that point on to be good, to be perfect, to be too wonderful to leave. Of course, I'm human, so this project was doomed from the beginning. I could never be good enough. I could never be wonderful and perfect. So instead, I lived in constant anxiety. We moved every year until I finished high school. Whenever the landlord found out my mother was divorced, we were out, and we'd have to move on. She was a school teacher, a primary school teacher, and she lost many jobs for the same reason. For some reason, being divorced was suspect, maybe contagious. So as a child, I didn't, of course, understand all the nuances of these situations. I just learned not to trust most adults, and I learned to keep secrets, because when information came out, it meant packing up and moving again. Eventually, my mother married again, and the teen years were even worse than the younger years, as her new husband was not a kind man. When I finally reached the age of 18 and went off to university, it was a relief to move on, to get out of that house, be a legal adult, and move beyond my childhood. I met my husband while I was at university. I was afraid of marriage, but I took a leap of faith and we married. And we had 4 children, all of whom are gorgeous, interesting, kind adults now. When they were small, we moved to to the United Kingdom, following my husband's job as a financial reporter. As I've said, I've had some experience in moving, so this felt like a great adventure to me, especially as this time I was part of the decision. And we could choose to go and have this new experience. My children really grew up there and met lots of new people and had a sense of another culture. After that, the company sent my husband to Asia, so we moved to Hong Kong, and we stayed there for 5 years. Again, it was a new community, and this one very different. I didn't have the language. The culture was something I was not familiar with. I had to become wholly open to this new experience and this new way of being. When we finally returned back to the United States, we moved to New York City, and again, surprisingly, this was a new culture and a new place. I hadn't lived in New York. The personality of the city was very new to me and a little intimidating. My children, although all American, born in New Jersey, had not lived in the United States, so this was a new culture for them as well. We were all adjusting. The children were growing and leaving one by one, off to university and work. I had been a stay-at-home mother, and now that job was mostly done. They were older, and I was ready to look at my work. What did I want to do? I wanted to do something kind. I wanted to be helpful, to be with people. While I pondered what to do, I was a docent at the Statue of Liberty, which was great fun. I met people from around the world every day and helped them with their little emergencies. I said hello, I welcomed them, gave a little education. Mostly I waved to them as they came and went on the ferries, and that was fun too. Children always wave back. Eventually I became involved in a local soup kitchen up here in the Upper West Side, and helped to co-manage this small group after a while. We were trying to address food insecurity in this neighborhood. I liked organizing, I liked planning, I liked being part of the cooking and sorting out the menus. The thing I liked best, though, was sitting with the people who came to eat and talking with them, learning, what's your story? What brought you here? How did you end up in a life where you're hungry? What's your dream of a better place? When I realized this aspect was the part that pulled me the most, I decided to train to be a chaplain. First, I enrolled in an interfaith seminary, which is when I discovered the New York Buddhist Church. While I was living in Hong Kong, I had encountered Buddhism and loved what I found. My introduction was from a rabbi there who led a meditation class using a Buddhist and mindfulness technique. I was amazed at the way he led us, this small group of people sitting with him, to a place of calm, a place that didn't eliminate the noisy anxieties in my brain, but it muted them. It was not a geographic place, it was a place of consciousness. And it was deep and wide and vast. It was a place I wanted to spend more time in. I started to look into other Buddhist groups, Tibetan, Chan, Zen, and slowly I began a home practice. I had a little corner where I would sit and wrap a blanket around my shoulders and meditate each morning. When we moved back to New York, I continued that practice. Part of the first year studies at my seminary was to find out more about other faith traditions and practices. And when my study group reached out to find a Buddhist Sangha, when we were doing the Buddhism series, I was excited to find out who I would meet. The first response came from our Gary Jastula, who welcomed us to a Sunday service like this one. Before this, I had not encountered Pure Land tradition. I was eager to discover what is the nature of Jodo Shinsho. I arrived with my group, and we participated in the service here. And afterwards, Gary stayed with us and answered questions for a few minutes, and then invited us to come again, and also to come to the Wednesday night meditations. So I started coming to the Wednesday night meditations, and eventually I met Cheryl Akemya and Sensei Reverend Earl. The community here is gentle and welcoming. I felt a keen sense of being at home, even if my attendance was not steady. As a chaplain, I'm often working on the weekends, so I never know when I can come or not. After seminary, I began my chaplaincy training in earnest, working with hospice patients. I worked at Lenox Hill Hospital, Mount Sinai, and finally to a residency at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. I also completed a foundation course of contemplative care with the New York Zen Center, which is a more Buddhist practice. When I began my residency, it was August of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Although I did have some misgivings, mainly because I didn't want to bring COVID home to my family, at the same time, I felt there was a reason my residency and the pandemic arrived together. What followed was an experience of helping people to negotiate all the different aspects of illness, of the emotional fallout, of the not knowing. And my work allowed me to be present with patients, their loved ones, with staff. Fear, ill health, grief, chaos, these have all been parts of dealing with this unknown virus. Everyone felt the nearness of death, the constant threat of contagion. Anxiety was very high. Throughout all these years of training, I had continued my practice, meditating, reading, attending classes, talking and asking questions. My perspective on so many things had changed. I began to understand that my life in some ways had prepared me for this moment. All we ever have is this moment, but of course it's sometimes hard to remember that. My chaotic childhood had brought to me a desire for steadiness, for an open life without secrets, compassion for those individuals who feel powerless in their situations, whatever those situations might be. My years as a frightened teenager where I had no sense of safety left me with a desire to help people see their own capacity, to advocate for themselves, to find a voice to explain their feelings, to find resilience, to keep moving forward. I believe everyone has that space of steadiness within themselves, despite the temporary chaos that might be around them. We can always go to our breath. We can inhabit our bodies consciously. We can remember that we are here not to know all things, but to experience this precise and perfect moment. That is true in daily life, even in the midst of a health crisis. Buddhism taught me all of these truths. In our prayers and chants, we acknowledge life is a process in which we do encounter suffering, and also that we have the capacity to process what we are doing, to find a way of life that acknowledges and looks for these causes of suffering. Our eagerness to cling to delusion, convinced that if we could change the conditions of our lives, we would be much happier. This causes us to suffer. In Buddhism, we strive to find a consciousness where we might free ourselves from our attachments to those conditions, where we might be open and aware of what exists. What a teaching. We recognize that life is sometimes happy and not always. Imperfections, including my own, my clinging to dreams of being someone else or being somewhere else, and that would make me so happy. It helps me to realize that these are illusions. And I have a capacity within me to let go of those and to deal with what's in front of me, what really exists in my life. I can ride the ups and downs of life, and that is truly a learning process. Without encountering suffering, how would I understand in such a deep way what is compassion? The Vietnamese teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, may peace rest upon him, tells a story about looking at a rubbish dump and seeing flowers growing on this rubbish dump. And he thought about the fact that these flowers are alive, so therefore one day they're going to die, and they'll become part of the rubbish in this dump. And then that soil with these dead flowers is going to nurture seeds and eventually grow more flowers. So they're each part of each other, the rubbish and the flowers. And so too in my life, this is a truth. My early unhappiness became a great source of compassion, both for the child I was and for the people I encounter today. My eagerness for all beings to feel loved springs from a childhood where I did not feel loved. Today, my children benefit as I make it very clear to them that they are loved unconditionally, wholly. My friends and family know that I love them, that I am present for them unconditionally. This has blessed my work as a chaplain, where I sit and I listen to each person's story. I sit with them in their unhappiness and their pain, their suffering. I meet that pain and suffering with empathy, with the knowledge that everything is impermanent. What's happening in this moment may dissipate in another moment. We don't control that pattern. We can only acknowledge what is and choose how to react. Meeting people with compassion allows them to know they are not alone in a scary time. I sit with them. I listen. I invite them into a space of love and safety. When I come to New York Buddhist Church on Sunday mornings, I remember the strength of this Sangha. This is a warm and welcoming community where I feel part of the whole. We're all going through our own imperfect and very interesting lives, sometimes with joy, sometimes encountering difficulties. Remembering the wisdom of the Dharma, I feel gratitude. I feel compelled toward acts of generosity. Dharma teaches us that we have a deep well of generosity, of compassion to share with others. In fact, an inexhaustible well. What's the source of this kindness? What is the exact nature of this generous mystery that brings us into and through life? The truth is, I may never know. I know I am part of this life. I know I am loved. I know I have been given this improbable gift of being human on this improbable planet in this particular time with all of its challenges and wonders. When I fall into a place of darkness, I remember there are other people sitting with me. We are just waiting for our eyes to adjust to this temporary darkness so we can see exactly what exists around us. Saying Namo Amida Butsu wholeheartedly is to lean into trust, as Sensei Reverend Earl was always saying to us, trust. This community guides me, strengthens me, and gives me an enthusiasm to keep learning and exploring. However long my time is on this earth, in this life, may I fill that time with acts of kindness and compassion, including toward myself. I'm grateful to have part of this community, to learn more about the Dharma, and to lean into the guidance of the Buddha. Thank you so much for listening to me today. With palms together, I bow to you. Namo Amida Buddha.
Thank you very much, Reverend Claudia, for a very, very interesting and wonderful talk. Very much appreciated. So will everyone now please rise for our Gatha? We will be singing Ondokusan followed by Nembutsu. Ondokusan is found on page, let's see, 218. Thank you, Nobuko-san. Nembutsu, Nembutsu, Nembutsu. Please be seated. So, this brings our service to a close. Are there any announcements? Anyone? Anyone in the Sangha have any announcements? The next week will be our Gotanye service, which will be followed by the Sokai, or annual membership meeting. So if you are a member, please come. If you are interested in becoming a member, you are also very, very welcome. However, only paid supporting members are given the privilege to vote in any upcoming election for board officers or any other issue that may come before the board. But it will give you some insight into the running of the church, and the board members would be very happy to meet you and discuss anything with you. So we hope to see you next week for Gotanye, which celebrates the birthday of our founder, Shinran Shonin. So please also come to that special service, which will be at 11:30, as usual. So I'd like to thank today our greeter, Mikyo Sakai. Thank you so much, Mikyo-san. Very much appreciate it. And our wonderful tech team, David Brady, and it looks like
We've got Tony as an apprentice.
Tony Armstrong is helping today.
Quick correction, 2 weeks out for Gotane.
I'm so sorry, folks. So that is 2 weeks. That is on the 22nd, I believe, of May. I'm losing track of time. Thank you very much for that correction. So you will find our full schedule online at newyorkbuddhistchurch.org. If you scroll to the menu on the right, you'll see something marked calendar, and you can download that, as well as take a look at all the community events that we offer, currently online only. But if you are interested and you wish to get a link to join any of our offerings, whether Wednesday night meditation, Saturday Dharma gathering, or Dharma chat, you can email us at nybc332@gmail.com, and we will happily provide a link so that you may join online. We are looking forward to reopening the building to in-person activities, and we'll keep you posted as to that. So I'd also like to thank, we have many, many flowers which were made as offerings today for Mother's Day and more. And I wish to thank everyone, I don't have your names, but I wish to thank everyone for your dana, for your contribution to beautifying the altar. There are many offerings. There's the offering of scent, which we do with flowers, which also embody life, with incense, but also with your dana. Your financial contributions are very much appreciated as they help us to maintain this facility for services. So if you're welcome to do oshoko and leave a donation, or you may send a donation online, or even download our membership form online and become a member and pay either through PayPal or through a credit card. You will see a link on our membership page or on our landing page on our website. Again, that's newyorkbuddhistchurch.org. If you would like to watch this or any other service which you may have missed, you may do so by going to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/c/New York Buddhist Church. And you can see other services there which you may have missed, or a replay of this one. So we very, very much appreciate your attendance today. It is for you that we do these services. And the fact that you chose to spend time here today is greatly appreciated. So please join me in closing Gassho. Oh, and I also wish to thank Nobuko Kodama-san for playing the piano today. She always plays very beautifully. Otherwise, we'd have to sing a cappella. Alrighty, so thank you, Nobuko-san. So please place your palms together in Gassho, and let's have our, let's say O-Nembutsu together in one voice as one Sangha, listening deeply to our voices joined together with Amida Buddha, Namandabutsu, 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 Namandabutsu. Thank you very much.